Keir Starmer is in a complete mess, and it's not just because Tulip Siddiq has finally been shown the door, not by his hand, mind you. Now, he's scrambling to deliver a half-hearted apology that's fooling absolutely no one. But hold on to your seats, because this is just scratching the surface. We are diving into how Starmer's weak leadership is ripping the Labour Party apart from within. From the Chagos Islands deal fiasco to the grooming gang scandal, we're exposing it all. You won't believe how deep this quagmire goes, so stick around as we unpack Labour's turmoil and reveal the shocking details. So, Tulip Siddiq is gone, but let's talk about why it took so long for Starmer to act. This mess dragged on for weeks. On January 15th, news broke about Siddiq's relatives in Bangladesh. Did Starmer spring into action? Absolutely not. He sat there, doing nothing while the scandal expanded. Days turned into weeks, and still, there was silence from Starmer. It's like he thought that ignoring the issue would make it vanish. But it didn't. The press had a field day. An anti-corruption minister embroiled in a corruption scandal? You can't make this stuff up. Starmer's team claimed they were looking into the situation. Really? Imagine catching your kid with their hand in the cookie jar and then spending weeks investigating instead of just addressing the issue. That's Starmer for you. When Siddiq finally resigned on February 7th, he didn't even sack her, she jumped before being pushed. Now he's trying to put on a front like he's in control. Please. Kay Burley called it right when she said Starmer was merely protecting his close friend. On resignation day, Siddiq tweeted that she hadn't breached the ministerial code, but even the ethics watchdog remarked that it was regrettable she wasn't more vigilant about the risks involved. Talk about an understatement. The public reaction was mixed, but many expressed what we were all thinking: her departure was inevitable. The pressure mounted, and the headlines were brutal while Starmer just sat back and watched it unfold. Why didn't he act sooner? Simple. He's weak. Now, this Siddiq scandal is just the beginning of Starmer's failures, and trust me, it gets worse. Everyone is calling out Starmer's handling of this debacle. He failed to act until the situation became completely untenable, leading many to question his leadership. What leadership, you ask? Let's not forget the glaring double standards at play. A senior Labour MP pointed out how differently Siddiq and Louis Hay were treated, one rule for Starmer's friends and another for everyone else. This scandal isn't just about Siddiq or Starmer, it's about the future of our country. If this is how Labour handles internal issues, imagine how they'd run the government. It's a frightening thought. It's time we start asking some serious questions about Starmer's ability to lead, not only the Labour Party but potentially our nation. Starmer's latest blunder regarding the Chagos Islands is another prime example of Labour's foreign policy incompetence, and who's fuming about it? None other than Donald Trump himself. Starmer made the brilliant decision to hand over the Chagos Islands without even consulting the Americans first. Yes, the same Americans who rely on these islands for critical military operations. It's like Starmer is trying to earn an award for diplomatic blunders. Trump's so incensed about this deal that he's looking into ways to veto it. Can you believe it? The former US president is actively working against a deal orchestrated by our Labour government. It's as if Starmer invited his ex to dinner without telling his current partner, a recipe for disaster in any relationship, let alone in international diplomacy. Trump's allies are voicing their disapproval, warning that giving the Chagos Islands back to Mauritius is a horrific idea, especially since Mauritius has ties with China. Even our military experts are ringing alarm bells, stating that the Chagos Islands, particularly Diego Garcia, are crucial for American military operations. But apparently, Starmer thinks that scoring political points is more important than national security. Meanwhile, Foreign Secretary David Lammy claims the White House and Pentagon are completely on board with this plan. Really, David? Because from where I'm sitting, you seem as out of touch with reality as a flat earther at a NASA convention. The timing couldn't be worse. We need strong ties with the US now more than ever, given the current global situation. This blunder could have repercussions for UK-US relations across the board, from trade negotiations to intelligence sharing. So, what does this say about Labour's competence on the world stage? If diplomacy were a game of chess, Starmer would be the guy who accidentally swallowed all his pieces and then tried to play with bottle caps instead. Now, let's shift gears and talk about the grooming gang scandal, another issue Starmer is deafeningly silent on. Remember when he promised to tackle this issue head-on? Months have gone by, and victims of these horrific crimes have been crying out for a national inquiry, yet Starmer's response has been absolute silence. Cathy Baddock has come out swinging, demanding a national inquiry into grooming gangs and highlighting the culture of silence from the British state. Suddenly, Starmer's ears perk up. It's like he just remembered he's supposed to be leading the country. Let's not forget his past role as Director of Public Prosecutions. He had the power to act when these crimes peaked, but did he? No. Now, he's scrambling to play catch-up. Victims are furious with Starmer's response, calling his apologies too little, too late. These survivors have endured unimaginable horrors, and Starmer thinks a half-hearted apology will suffice? It's insulting and reveals just how out of touch he really is. The public is demanding answers, and rightfully so. How long can Starmer keep dodging this issue before it completely derails his leadership? Starmer's handling of the economy is spiraling into a full-blown disaster. The pound has hit its lowest value against the dollar since November 2023, and what's Labour's response? Rachel Reeves, their Chancellor, claims they'll go further and faster for economic growth. Well, Rachel, how about you start by not driving our economy off a cliff? Things are only getting worse. The cost of government borrowing is skyrocketing, meaning more spending cuts or higher taxes. And guess who pays? Hard-working British families. Yet Starmer has the audacity to tell us everything's fine. Is he living in the same Britain as the rest of us? Let me be clear, it's far from fine. Lord Moore, former head of the National Audit Office, warns that market confidence in the UK is fragile. That's putting it mildly. Our economy is like a house of cards in a windstorm, and Starmer is still insisting it's stable. Who's he trying to fool? Labour's policies are scaring off investors at an alarming rate. Their workers' rights charter could cost companies £5 billion a year, according to business leaders. That means jobs, growth, and our economic future are all at risk.